says in Hebrews that we are to honor those who are the leaders among us, and we're to do it for their work's sake. Not because they've decided that they have this big title. I remember, what was Idahosa's first name? Sorry. Benson Idahosa. He was in our home and in our church, and he had a handkerchief with all of his titles. And I wish I had kept it. It had his picture, and it had just the apostolic, most high reverend, da-da-da-da-da, and there was one that we said, and how did you get that title? He said, I gave it to myself. So, it's not according to titles or that type of thing, but according to a life well lived, that is an example for believers. And I believe that's what Dave and I have tried to do. And so we are going to introduce to you now our second daughter, Julie Perry, who is on the network leadership team with her husband, Gary. And here's the reason I say that, because he spells it Geary.
So you're going to call him Geary now?
No. But they direct the network youth camp and have for 18 years, and now the traveling youth camps. And also she takes care of financial things and the music. And then her daughter, Gentry Heaslip, and newly married March 7th of this year. And she is May 7th, yes, and she is our network graphic designer and admin assistant. And then we have Sherry Abeda, and she is an adopted granddaughter because she lives in their home. She birthed our great-grandchild, and she is now the network administrative director, which is miraculous. We didn't know she had the gifts to do this, but Jan Whitaker, who was the director at the time, she knew it by the Spirit, and she was right. And then our granddaughter, Leah Fellers, who lives here in Kansas City. And when she first arrived here years ago, Dennis and Denise took her into their home with her baby and took care of her there for 1 year. And I just honor them for that, made her a part of their family. So I've asked them to help with this because I love teaching with my family. I just really do. It's just a special thing for me. And I've told people this. Dave passed September 4th. His funeral was on the 9th because everyone had gathered and we needed to do it before everyone had to return home. And we have 4 daughters. 3 live in Colorado and then 1 in Florida. She and her husband pastor a church there. She is adopted from Korea. But everyone was there, all the grandchildren, and to see them at Dave's funeral on the platform, sharing about the love of God and sharing about their dad and what he had meant in their lives. I'm telling you, it was a highlight of my life. It was very bittersweet, but just to watch that was thrilling for me. And I thank you all for that. When I pass, you better do as well.
Who's going to be there to organize it?
Yeah, who will organize it? Could someone step up and Sherry, okay. Yeah, so we have something just to share with you that doesn't make any difference now, but it does to us, because at the funeral, I told everyone that we had been told by the hospital that Dave was full of cancer. At that point, they knew we weren't doing an autopsy, and I'm sorry that I'm suspicious, but I am. And so tell what happened, Julie, what you decided to do after the funeral even.
Yeah. So like I said, Dad went in on a Sunday night, and they did test after test after test after test and couldn't find a reason, and they're throwing around all these words. They're throwing on cancer, they're throwing on just a bunch of stuff because they didn't know. So
and I said, please check for parasites.
Yeah, she kept saying that, and they looked
every
at her.
day. Oh, we forgot. Oh, the aide forgot. Oh, next time. So
yeah, so there just weren't a lot of answers, and I had heard Teresa told me about this doctor out east, and it's a nurse, and she tests DNA like Donna Scraw used to. And so she tests DNA, and so I thought, okay, we're going to do this, because we expected him to walk out. We were not expecting him to go home. So I said, okay. And so I had him lick a piece of paper, because the miraculous way God has made our bodies is that just by a strand of hair or your saliva, you can tell everything about your body. It's incredible. It's incredible. So I did this. I had him lick this piece of paper, and that was on Thursday. And then Friday morning, we get a call, and they said, you got to come. He's crashed already 3 times. And we're like, what? So we rushed there, and I knew he was going, because he was intubated, and his eyes were rolled back and fixed. And so you just knew that this was the moment he was going to leave.
And we laid hands on him and said.
I knew he wasn't coming back. I knew he was gone.
I didn't. And so at one point, his eyes came and focused on me, and I said, oh, you're back. And it didn't last long. He was trying to speak, but wasn't able to.
No. I think that he had seen Jesus, because, you come back 3 times, and I think he saw Jesus and said, sorry, guys, there's no way I'm coming back.
So you know that we sang Good, Good Father this morning. And I was at Mona's church. Benjamin and Amanda Conway, partners in London, had come for a conference here, and they were speaking at Edge Church, and I drove them up there, and it was just a few weeks after Dave passed. And you guys you were there, you led that song, Good, Good Father. And I just cried, and I thought, not really. And then I got over that after a while. I can sing it now, because I know it's true. And at one point, not too long ago, God spoke to me and said, it was good for Dave to come home. And I understood that, because I believe that there were things in his life he just couldn't handle, some heartache and relationship things and so forth. And he tried, but it just didn't quite get there. No. So, it was good for him to go home, and I'm happy with that.
It was so beautiful when he was, not when he was crashing, that was not beautiful. But there were times that she said he was gone, and we were there, and then by the time she got there, he had been gone. But when she came in the room, as she said, she came to his side, and he came back, and he looked at her, and so she says, oh, there you are, and we really don't want you to go. Please, don't go, but if you have to, it's okay. And he just had one single tear, and then he went. It was as if he knew his spirit needed to come, and he wanted to see her again, and he wanted to say goodbye. And not that you gave him permission, but I think for him, out of all the years you had shared together, it was important. And you could see it was like, single tear, I'll see you later.
So back to.
Thank you.
So 2 weeks go by, and I threw his DNA away, because I thought, well, what's the use? So then I thought, you know what? I'm going to send that anyway. And I called the lady, and she said, I never tested someone whose life force is gone, but I'm going to do it. So I sent it to her, and she tested his DNA, and she tested his body, and she said, you know, there were lots of things wrong. He had parasites, and he had his, you know, there were a lot of issues with his body. She said, but he did not have cancer. She said it tested all around, but there was no cancer. So, you know, testing your DNA to me is like the most accurate thing you can do, because you're just asking the body instead of guessing. And not that it makes any difference, because he's gone anyway. But for me, I thought, well, that makes more sense, because the cancer and my dad they didn't go together. And I couldn't reconcile those two. And so it was good. I mean,
Yes.
that part is good. I was relieved, and that was, I think, a gift from God to have her be able to do that and just tell me what I already knew. You know, but when the doctor comes and tells you one thing, you think, oh, I have to believe that. But no, it wasn't true.
So we're going to just share about his life well lived. And Leah, would you like to be first and just share what your Grandpa Dave meant to you?
Yes. I just want to honor my grandparents together, because they really have been like just such a huge influence on our family. My grandmother has hosted almost every holiday since I was a little kid, opened her home for Thanksgiving, Christmas. I mean, they opened their homes, so we used to do like family sleepovers at their house, where she would just have all of us in. And our family knows how to reproduce. We have a lot of grandchildren in our home. And so just to see them just love on us from such an early age, and to just have them be such an influence. They do this thing every Christmas where they get us a hotel room, and they pack each family in a suite, and we just shop and eat and swim together. But it was my grandparents who have facilitated all these family get-togethers, and they've always done that. So I just appreciate you guys. My grandmother is a powerhouse. She is the Proverbs 31 woman who's clothed with dignity and honor. And my grandfather is the man who stands at the gates and is respected. Yes, this is true. It's a pair. It's totally a pair. So in Bethel, they have this saying that I just love, and the saying is, love is coming after you. And I feel like that was my grandfather. I feel like that was his heart. When he walked in the room, love was coming after you. It didn't matter who you are, what color you were, how old you were. Love was going to get you. It was going to get you. With a kiss and a big hug, and he's going to say, I just love you, sweetie. You know, that was my grandfather. That was the heart of who he was.
Yes.
And I wanted to tell this story because I just feel like it radiates my grandfather. I used to work in a salon. I did hair for about 5 years, and I chose like pretty prestigious salons. I wanted to be like excellent at my craft. So I worked at this salon, and my grandfather one day, he surprised me by bringing me flowers. And he's coming in, and Grandpa's just being Grandpa. He walks up, and I'm assisting at this point. I'm standing behind my boss, and it's like serious. It's like salon mode. I mean, we're all in the mode doing hair, you know. It's like, and he comes in, he just grabs the assistant next to me, gives her a big hug, and he says, I love you, sweetie. And I mean, somebody he's never met before brings me flowers, and I'm just like, Grandpa, like, you know, like, this is like salon mode. We don't do that here. But here's the deal. We go back to the break room, and we're both mixing color together, and she goes, you know, my grandfather died 2 years ago. And she goes, I haven't had a hug from my grandpa in a very long time. And she started tearing up. Like, my whole nervous system's like, ah. And she's like, that just meant so much to me. And so I just believe that's the heart of my grandfather. If I've learned anything and have been impacted by anything that my grandfather did, is he just loved well. I never saw him argue out theology. I never saw him get out his Bible and try to debate with anybody. Love was just going to come after you. And guess what? Love wins. It never fails. It never, ever, ever fails. And I think my grandfather knew that at the core of everybody's being, somebody said this last night, we just want to be loved. And guess what? When somebody else loves us and we get to receive that love, it's a reflection of the Father's love. And so he just did it so well. And so if I learned something, another huge way that my grandfather impacted me, and this is now that I'm raising my own children and in my own family, as I look through the years and I'm raising my own kids, I just realized that my grandfather knew like the Lord's timing. And I never, since we were on like about 12 years old, he started taking us on mission trips with him. I went to the Navajo Nations with him. I went to Japan with him. I probably went other places as well, but he never said no to us. He always invited us to go, and if we wanted to do something, he said, yes, yeah, I want you to come with me. And if you've traveled with young children, it's not easy when you're on the road and you're like speaking in front of other people and you're trying to get the kids to come along. It's not easy. But my grandfather never forced our hand at anything. He never tried to like force us to pray, force us to step out where, and and as a parent, I see with my own children, and you see their gifts growing, and you're like, prophesy over that person. You've got the gift. Just do it, And my grandfather knew that the Lord's timing, that things would be released. And it wasn't this pressure cookie. He just put us in this situation. I remember being baptized in the Holy Spirit at 13 at youth camp. He just let me come on my own, And when I was ready, I just knew that he knew that the Lord's timing, like the Lord was in control. So I think of that as I'm raising my children, and I think, Lord, I don't have to force them into their giftings, even though I see them. I'm going to trust you and your timing over my family. And so, yeah, awesome.
Well, that reminds me of a story in Japan when
Yes.
he took Gentry and Leah.
Yes.
And here they are, these little Americans, and they're so friendly. Konnichiwa! And
Yeah.
he's saying hi to everybody. Konnichiwa! And he's like, girls, because they're so friendly and so pretty.
And so all these boys are coming around, and Dave said, I can't fight them all off. So there's an example for all of us in ministry and as leaders. Love comes after you. Love comes with you when you walk somewhere. Love is the major thing.
Yeah.
And it never fails. Mm-hmm. Now, Gentry.
I was going to.
Step into the spotlight.
I really admire that my grandfather, sometimes in ministry, we get used to putting on faces or a show. We think people want to see something, so there's a projection. And he was a man who consistently, at home, who he was the same as when he was on stage. When he was running errands, he was the same as he was on the platform. That there was a consistency. Like, his life was his message. And yes, he got up and would have amazing things to share and funny things to make us laugh, but that was just him being him. He was like that all the time. That really spoke to me. And he wasn't perfect. None of us are, if you haven't realized yet. And we're not saying...
And that's a good point. Let me just interrupt here because I wanted to say that.
Yeah.
He was not without flaws, but I don't choose to confess his flaws. The Bible says, confess your faults to one another, not someone else's. So remember that too.
Not your spouse.
No, that's good. That's really good. I think, to me, the biggest testimony is what you don't have to say, but what comes through. And as Leah said, it was no discrimination for any human. I mean, you look at some people and sometimes they're harder to love, and I think he loved them even more. But this was just God working through him. And so that was one of the things that I really admired and take from my grandfather, was the consistency of who he was just through and through. And then secondly, and I shared a little bit about this at his ceremony, his celebration ceremony, was that the power of one man's yes, the power of one person's yes and full surrender to God. That here's a farm boy, smallest of 13, just, kind of like David, right? Just would be overlooked, not really much there to see, but his willingness to surrender and God's ability to work and show himself so mighty through our yes, that how many times God asked him to do things that may have looked ridiculous or uncomfortable or whatever it was, but God is able to show himself grand through anybody, through anyone here. And the more we say yes, the more God is able to live through us. And my grandfather was really an inspiration to me for that I could see. I could see every time that he would step out in things, and some of his stories were outrageous. I could never see myself doing some of the things that he did, but to hear his obedience and how God was able to show himself mighty. And my grandfather would always say, the Lord he's searching to and fro. His eyes are searching for who he can show himself mighty to. He's waiting for us to put a face on him. He's waiting for us to demonstrate his power. And God's no discriminator of persons, no age, no, and to see him throughout, starting his ministry in 40s and then 77, that this isn't just for a certain time in your life. This is for all time of your life. This is for your whole life. And if it's for him, then it's for you. And what Grandpa really did was say that we're all loaded. You're loaded. You have it. I'm not special. I just said yes.
So the next thing is then, say yes to Jesus living his life through you on this earth.
Amen.
As you,
Yeah.
not as somebody else,
Right.
but as you. He lives in you, and his purpose and desire is to live
Right.
through you, to
Yeah.
be a blessing to the people of the
Yeah.
earth. And your personality
Right.
is how God made you,
Yep.
and he loves it.
Yep.
I think that's why he was so powerful and effective as a minister, though, because he wasn't trying to be anybody else. He had that revelation, and he was just walking it out. He really was, and always encouraging us to do the same.
Sherry.
Well, for me, I just want to say thank you, first of all, to him and to you, Grandma, and to you, Julie. I mean, this family, if anything that I see is that love heals. And in all the turmoil I experienced in my lifetime, and I've lived such a short amount of time, it was the love that I was given unconditionally that has healed me and inspired me to be me and to live my life and to believe that there's good. And so I just want to say thank you first and foremost, because I'd never experienced that before.
Well, and that's mainly Julie and Gary, and welcoming you into their home.
Giri. Yes, I wrote it down because just in case, I have some tears. But one of the things that I always took away from it is that Grandpa always stirred up faith. Anytime that I was in a place where it just was a little confusing and I was a little unfocused, he just knew exactly what to say. And it was never something super hard to understand, or I had to break out my Bible and figure out what it meant or anything to that degree. He just walked by me, and he's making pico in the house, and he says, "You got to find a man that's not jealous of your gifts." Okay. Little nuggets.
Whoa,
That's what he said,
that's
little
great.
nuggets.
Pico de gallo, for those who don't know, it's a Mexican relish, salsa.
Yeah. That's another one. I wrote him down here. He says, "Your gifts work by love." I'm sitting there trying to figure out what I'm going to teach and what I'm going to say, and he goes, "It works by love." He goes, "This'll fight you. Works by love." And it's just all those unexpected times where I needed that, like she needed a hug, and for me, I needed some encouragement. He always, his timing was perfect.
I love that he said to you, find a man who will not be jealous of your gifts.
And yeah. He'd be reading the paper or something at the table, and he'd just look up, and I'm stunned for a couple hours, You are who you hang around with, bringing me in, someone's praying, and I'm just admiring everything that's going on, because I didn't grow up in ministry. I never knew that, and he's pulling me in, and getting me in there, and I loved that. I remember one time I was using the Audi. They had let me borrow the Audi for my small son, David. I was using that car, and it broke down, and there was steam everywhere, and maybe this
Look at that, and it broke down. Wow.
Guess
What
I'm done
timing.
now. No, but I was panicking. I was by myself. I didn't have a cell phone at the time. my service was off, and so I was by myself with my little infant, and the whole car's full of smoke. And I remember looking at my phone, and this man walked by, and I called, and I talked to Grandpa. And, he's like, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I think I'm going to try to drive the car to the auto parts store. He goes, you are just awesome. That's all he said. And I remember seeing him after that. And he said, man, you're not panicking. You're calm. You were just a graceful woman. He goes, so full of grace. And it just at so many points calling out the best. And I'll never forget that time because he was just so impressed that I wasn't panicking and doing different things. I thought I was not doing a great job, but he saw the best. And, man, there's so much I can say, but the power of belief. I'll never forget the first time I heard him quote Mark 16, 17, and 18, where he said that, I wrote it down. And these signs shall follow them that believe. He goes, what? Believe. In my name they shall cast out devils. They shall speak in new tongues. They shall take up serpents. And if they drink any deadly thing, it shall not hurt them. They shall lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover. And it just hit my heart at that moment that all he does is believe that Jesus is who he says he is, and he was who he was because of Jesus. It's just believing and trusting and loving. That's it.
Wonderful.
And God was always with him.
That's great. So believe, trust, and live. And like Ed was saying, that God is everything. And there aren't 1, 2, 3 priorities in life. It's just life and living it to the fullest with Jesus living his life through you every moment, being led by the Spirit, and then call out the best in people. Call out the best. Anybody can, as Nate said, trying to convince people they're sinners before getting them saved. You don't need to do that for people. They do know what's wrong with them. Call out the best, and let's see that come forth. And I have one instance of that on Facebook when a grandchild has a birthday or a child. On my timeline, I put photos and say good things about them. And a grandson, 25 years old, recently had a birthday, and I wrote that his pastoring gift was amazing and da-da-da-da-da. And this friend in Illinois who is a pastor wrote to me and said, we have a daughter, she's 26, and she's looking for a godly man. Do you think that this could be a hookup? And I had to write back and say, well, I was speaking by faith because right now he's using his pastoring gift as a bartender. So call out the best in people. Julie?
Well, I was thinking about when Dad and Mom first got into ministry in the 70s, and I went to college at Oral Roberts University, and you see a lot of people who aren't real, or maybe they're just behind a wall. A lot of those ministers, they have seen so many people that their wall is like this thick, and you can feel it. They don't connect. They're not trying to connect with people. But I could always come home, and I knew Mom and Dad were real. Because it wasn't a put on, it wasn't about the show, it wasn't about, because there was one guy in Tulsa and he would plan it out, what he was going to call out in the spirit. Oh, somebody here has a knee problem. But it would be like a routine, because that guy was doing the best he knew, but he just didn't know. But I always knew that with Dad, it was real. Because he wasn't trying to put on a show, he wasn't trying to have a ministry, he was just living out God. And so to see that, I think it kept me, because hypocrisy is something that turns a lot of people off. They're this way, and then behind the scenes they're this way. And it really hurts people's hearts. And I know somebody who actually went to Oral Roberts University and became an atheist because of what he saw there with, I don't know what he saw. I saw it too, but I could come home and say, no, this is real. God is real. This is a real thing. And so then, so much, as you guys all know, but I think joy is, just that in spite of everything Dad went through, because we all the hardships, and he had his fair share. And just the joy that he took in living. He loved all those kinds of things. He loved being God in this world, and putting a face on Jesus. And that was probably sums it up. He put a face on Jesus.
There you go, put a face on Jesus. And you know, we were talking, Julie and I were this week, about the fact that we didn't build a big church or a big ministry. And that's not what we're here for. We are here to build people. Get Jim Richards' book. It's out of print, so I don't know how you'll get it. But Leadership That Builds People, digital, because that helps you set your priorities right and see straight and know what your focus should be. Our focus is to build people. And he did that. We have thousands of testimonies after he passed, and even on Father's Day, all over the world, saying, I'd be a mess if you hadn't started the network. And the Navajo Nation is singing and dancing because Dave came. And so wherever it is in the world, we build people. And if it doesn't show up in a huge crowd that gathers somewhere, they'll be there in heaven. Yeah. So, thank you all.
Whoa. Whoa.